Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Like a ghost wandering through rooms filled with people who share your blood but not your dreams. My name is Maya Sullivan, and for 23 years, I was the daughter nobody noticed. While my family celebrated my brother's every achievement, I existed in the shadows planning, building, and preparing for the day when they would finally see me. This is the story of how the invisible daughter became impossible to ignore. This is my revenge not through destruction, but through undeniable success. The morning light filtered through my childhood bedroom window, casting familiar patterns across walls covered with achievements nobody ever acknowledged. Certificates from debate competitions, academic awards, volunteer recognition, each one a silent testament to a life lived in the margins of my family's attention. Maya, get down here and make breakfast. My mother's voice pierced through the thin walls like it did every morning. No good morning, no please, just commands wrapped in assumptions that my time, my existence, served only to support theirs. I was 23 years old, holding a master's degree in business administration that I'd earned while working 2 jobs. And I still lived in this house because they'd convinced me it was my duty. Family comes first, they said. But whose family? Certainly not mine. I descended the stairs, each step a measured movement in the carefully choreographed dance I'd performed my entire life. The kitchen was already filled with the chaos of the Sullivan household morning routine. My father sat at the head of the table, newspaper creating a barrier between him and the world. My mother bustled around, preparing an elaborate breakfast spread not for me, never for me, but for my younger brother, Derek, the golden child, the blessed son. At 21, he dropped out of college twice, burned through 3 different business opportunities funded by our parents, and was currently finding himself by sleeping until noon and playing video games until dawn. Yet somehow, he remained the center of their universe, the sun around which all their hopes and dreams orbited. Maya, Derek needs protein this morning. He has that important interview, Mom said, not looking up from the eggs she was whisking. I paused, spatula in hand. What interview? Some marketing position. Your father pulled strings to get him in the door. Pride radiated from her voice like heat from the stove. That's wonderful, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Nobody had pulled strings for me. Nobody had even asked about my interviews, my applications, my future. I'd learned over the years that pointing out these disparities was futile. It led to lectures about being supportive, accusations of jealousy, reminders that Derek needed more help because he was still finding his way, as if I'd emerged from the womb with a roadmap and a 5-year plan. Oh, and Maya. Dad finally lowered his newspaper, acknowledging my existence for the first time that morning. We're going to need you to postpone that work thing you mentioned. Derek's going to need a ride to his interview. And your mother and I have that charity luncheon. My work thing is a presentation to potential investors for the startup I've been developing for 2 years, I said quietly, keeping my voice level despite the rage building in my chest like a storm. I've mentioned it 17 times in the past 3 months. Dad waved his hand dismissively. I'm sure you can reschedule. Derek's interview is time sensitive. Something inside me cracked. Not broke, I'd been broken too many times to count, but cracked in a way that let light in. Clarity, purpose. No, I said. The single syllable hung in the air like a soap bubble, fragile and foreign. Mom turned from the stove, wooden spoon dripping egg onto the floor. Excuse me? No, I repeated, stronger this time. Derek is 21 years old. He can take an Uber. He can drive himself. He can even, revolutionary thought, take public transportation. I have my own life, my own career, my own future. And I'm done putting it on hold for his convenience. The kitchen fell silent, except for the sizzle of eggs beginning to burn on the stove. Dad's newspaper crumpled in his grip. Mom's face cycled through confusion, shock, and then settled on indignation. After everything we've done for you, Mom began, her voice sharp as broken glass. This is how you repay us. With selfishness? I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I carefully placed the spatula on the counter and met her eyes directly. What have you done for me, Mom? Please, enlighten me. Because from where I'm standing, I paid for my own education, found my own jobs, built my own life, all while being your unpaid housekeeper, cook, and chauffeur. So please, tell me what exactly I'm repaying. We gave you a roof over your head. Dad stood, his face reddening. I pay rent, I countered calmly. $800 a month for a childhood bedroom and the privilege of being your servant. I could get a studio apartment for that price. The only reason I stayed was because you convinced me that family mattered, that being here mattered. But it's only ever been about what I can do for you, never about what you could do for me. Derek chose that moment to shuffle into the kitchen, still in his pajamas, despite his supposedly important interview being in 2 hours. What's all the yelling about? Your sister is being selfish, Mom said, turning back to rescue the eggs, though they were already ruined. Much like this conversation, Derek looked at me with sleepy confusion. Maya, selfish? That's new. Is it, Derek? I asked, genuinely curious. Tell me, when's my birthday? He blinked. What did I study in college? More blinking. A confused look toward our parents for help. What do I do for work? Silence. Where am I presenting today? What am I presenting? What have I been working on that's apparently less important than your Uber ride? Derek shifted uncomfortably, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not empathy exactly, but perhaps the first stirring of awareness. Look, Maya, it's fine, I interrupted, surprising myself with how calm I felt. The storm inside had transformed into something else, something cold and clear and powerful. Purpose. The answer is you don't know. None of you know, because you've never asked. Not once in 23 years have any of you asked about my future, my dreams, my plans. I could have been curing cancer or planning to colonize Mars, and you wouldn't have noticed, because you've never looked at me long enough to see me. Maya, you're being dramatic, Dad said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Am I? I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened my calendar. Here's what I've done in the past year while living in this house. I developed a business model for a sustainable fashion startup. I secured preliminary meetings with 3 investors. I built a prototype, created a marketing strategy, and assembled a team of 5 talented people who believe in the vision. Today, this morning, in exactly 2 hours, I'm presenting to the final investor we need to launch fully. This could change my entire life, and not one of you knew any of this existed. Mom's face had gone pale. You never told us. I told you 18 times, I corrected, pulling up my notes app where I'd started documenting, knowing this day would come. 18 separate occasions where I mentioned my business, my meetings, my plans. You changed the subject every single time, usually to talk about Derek. The room felt heavy with truths too long unspoken. I looked at each of them in turn: my father with his newspaper and his assumptions, my mother with her ruined eggs and her favoritism, my brother with his privileged confusion. I'm leaving after my presentation, I said quietly. I've already found an apartment. My things are mostly packed. I'll be out by tonight. Maya, don't be hasty, Dad started, but I held up my hand. This isn't hasty. This is 2 decades overdue. I love you, all of you, but I can't be invisible anymore. I can't keep shrinking myself to make room for Derek's potential while my actual accomplishments go unnoticed. I'm done. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, ignoring Mom's protests, Dad's demands, and Derek's confused. Wait, you're really leaving? In my room, I changed into the outfit I'd carefully selected weeks ago, a tailored navy suit that made me feel powerful, capable, seen. I applied makeup with steady hands, despite my heart hammering against my ribs. This was it, the moment everything changed. My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner, Zara, ready to change the world? I smiled, typing back, born ready. As I gathered my presentation materials, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The invisible daughter looked back at me, but there was something different in her eyes now. Fire. determination, the absolute certainty that she was done apologizing for taking up space downstairs. I could hear my family arguing about me probably, about how ungrateful I was, how unexpected this rebellion seemed, as if years of neglect could be consequence-free. I grabbed my keys and my laptop bag, took one last look at the room where I'd spent my life, feeling like a guest in my own home, and walked out. The morning air hit my face like a baptism, fresh, clean, full of possibility. I didn't look back. 3 hours later, I stood in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the city, surrounded by people who'd listened to every word I'd said, who'd asked questions about my vision, who'd truly seen me for the first time in my professional life. The lead investor, Catherine Park, extended her hand with a smile that transformed her businesslike expression into something warmer. "Miss Sullivan, you've built something remarkable here. The sustainability model, the ethical supply chain, the market analysis, it's all incredibly thorough. We'd like to invest." The words washed over me like rain after a drought. Zara grabbed my hand, squeezing so hard it hurt, but I didn't care. We'd done it. We'd actually done it. "Thank you," I managed, shaking Catherine's hand with what I hoped was professional composure and not the giddy disbelief threatening to bubble up as laughter or tears or some combination of both. As we discussed terms and timelines, my phone vibrated repeatedly in my bag. I ignored it. Whatever my family wanted could wait. For once in my life, I wasn't available at their convenience. The meeting wrapped with handshakes and promises of contract drafts by end of week. Zara and I stumbled out of the building in a daze, finally allowing ourselves to celebrate once we hit the sidewalk. "We did it," Zara shrieked, pulling me into a hug that lifted me off my feet. "Maya Sullivan, CEO of Ecothread. How does it feel?" "Surreal," I admitted, laughing. "Terrifying. Amazing. Your family must be so proud," she said, and the words were like cold water. I pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, all from various family members. "Actually," I said slowly, scrolling through the increasingly frantic messages, "they don't know yet. They didn't think my presentation was important enough to ask about." Zara's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to anger in rapid succession. "You're kidding." "I wish I was." I pocketed my phone without responding to any messages. "But it doesn't matter anymore. I'm done living for their approval. Today is about us, about what we built." We celebrated over lunch at a restaurant I'd never been able to afford before, toasting with expensive wine to futures we'd built with our own hands. Zara talked about expansion plans, about the jobs we'd create, about changing the fashion industry from the inside out. I listened and contributed, but part of my mind kept drifting back to that kitchen, to my mother's shocked face, to my father's crumpled newspaper, to Derek's confusion. They really hadn't known. After years of telling myself they were deliberately ignoring me, part of me had still hoped I was wrong, that they'd secretly been paying attention, that they'd surprise me with support. But no, the truth was simpler and sadder. I had been invisible. Not maliciously, perhaps, but completely. "You okay?" Zara asked, studying my face. "Yeah," I said, and meant it. "Just thinking about how different my life is going to be now." "Better," she corrected. "Different and better." As afternoon faded into evening, I drove to my old house, my former house, to collect my belongings. The moving van I'd arranged sat in the driveway like a statement of intent. Mom opened the door before I could knock, her eyes red-rimmed. "Maya, please, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said gently but firmly. "I'm 23 years old. It's time I had my own life." "But we need you," she said, and there it was, the truth beneath all the protests. Not "we love you," not "we're proud of you," but "we need you." Need my labor, need my support, need my invisibility so Derek's light could shine brighter. "I need me too," I replied, and for the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself. 6 months had passed since I'd walked out of my family's house, and my life had transformed beyond recognition. Ecothread had launched to unexpected critical Acclaim featured in major fashion magazines, picked up by 3 major retailers, and garnered a social media following that grew exponentially each week. The sustainable fashion movement had found its voice, and somehow, impossibly, I was part of leading it. My apartment was small, but mine a studio with exposed brick and enormous windows that flooded the space with light. Every morning I woke up to silence instead of demands, to possibility instead of obligation. I'd filled the walls with vision boards and success timelines, with photos of the team and our first product line. It was a shrine to visibility, to the future I'd built with my own hands. But success, I was learning, had a way of forcing confrontations you'd rather avoid. The call came on a Wednesday morning while I was reviewing designs with Zara, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Maya? It's Derek. I froze, stylus hovering over the tablet. In 6 months, my family had tried, reaching out exactly 3 times awkward, surface-level messages that I'd responded to with polite but distant replies. Derek had never called directly. Hi, Derek, I said carefully. Zara looked up with concern, mouthing family. I nodded. I saw the article about your company in Business Weekly. That's huge, Maya. Thank you. I kept my voice neutral, waiting. Look, can we meet? I know things have been weird, but I'd really like to talk. Just us. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to protect the peace I'd built. But curiosity won. Okay, when? We agreed on a coffee shop equidistant from both our locations' neutral territory. I hung up, feeling unsettled, like I'd agreed to revisit a crime scene. You don't have to do this, Zara said softly. You don't owe them anything. I know, I said, but maybe I owe myself the closure. Derek looked different when I met him 3 days later. Thinner, maybe, or perhaps just less cushioned by parental indulgence. He stood when I entered, awkward in his formality, and for a moment we just stared at each other across the gap of 6 months and 23 years of misunderstanding. Thanks for coming, he said as we sat. You said you wanted to talk. He fidgeted with his coffee cup, and I noticed his nails were bitten ragged, a habit I'd never seen before. I've been thinking a lot since you left, about what you said, about how we never asked about your life. I waited, refusing to make this easier for him. You were right, he continued, the words seemingly difficult to extract. I couldn't answer a single one of your questions that morning. Not your birthday, not your major nothing. And that's really messed up, Maya. You're my sister. I should know these things. Yes, I agreed simply. You should. I've been in therapy, he said, surprising me. Mom and Dad's idea, actually. After you left, things got really tense at home. They were fighting about whose fault it was that you moved out. Mom blamed Dad for being dismissive. Dad blamed Mom for coddling me too much. I was caught in the middle, and I started realizing they'd been fighting about you for years, just never where you could hear it. I absorbed this information like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit the picture I'd constructed. What do you mean? Mom apparently told Dad you needed more recognition for your academic achievements. Dad said you were fine, that you were self-sufficient, and Derek needed more attention because he struggled more. They both convinced themselves they were doing the right thing. It was never malicious, Maya, just profoundly ignorant. Intention doesn't erase impact, I said. But I felt something shifting inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first crack in the wall of anger I'd built. I know, and I'm not asking you to forgive them, or me. I just wanted you to know that your leaving changed things, made us look at ourselves, made me realize I've been living in a bubble where everything was handed to me, and I never appreciated how much you were sacrificing to keep that bubble intact. Derek pulled out his phone, showing me his calendar. I got a job, a real one, not one Dad arranged. I'm working in digital marketing for a nonprofit. The pay is terrible, but I'm actually good at it. And I'm going back to school part-time to finish my degree. Business administration, like you. Despite myself, I felt a flicker of something that might have been pride. That's good, Derek. Really. I'm trying to be better. To be someone you might actually want as a brother, not just someone you're related to by accident of birth. He paused, vulnerability flickering across his features. I miss you, Maya. I know I don't have the right to, but I do. The coffee shop bustled around us, students studying, professionals having meetings, lives intersecting and diverging like complex choreography. I thought about forgiveness, about growth, about the difference between the family you're born into and the family you choose. I miss you too, I admitted, surprising myself. But the person I miss is someone I'm not sure ever really existed. Because I miss a brother who knew me, who saw me, who celebrated my successes the way I celebrated his. That brother was a fantasy I created to make the loneliness bearable. Derek flinched, but didn't look away. Then let me become him, the real version. Not overnight, but give me the chance to know you actually know. You, tell me about Ekathred. Tell me about your vision, your struggles, your victories. Teach me how to be the brother you deserved all along. Why? I asked, needing to understand his motivation. Why now? Because I looked at my life and realized I've never actually accomplished anything. Everything I had was given to me or done for me. Meanwhile, you built an empire from nothing, with no one's help, despite every obstacle we put in your way. You're who I want to be when I grow up, Maya. And I'm 21 years old. It's time I actually grew up. We talked for 3 hours. I told him about Ekathred, about the late nights and the rejections and the small victories that built into something larger. He listened, really listened, asking questions that showed he was actually processing what I said. He told me about his therapy sessions, about recognizing his privilege, about the uncomfortable process of seeing himself clearly for the first time. It wasn't reconciliation. Not yet. But it was a beginning. As we parted ways, Derek hesitated. Mom and Dad want to see you. They're scared to reach out directly because they think you hate them. I don't hate them, I said honestly. I'm just done being invisible. Would you consider having dinner with us? All of us. Let them actually see you. See what you've built. I thought about it, about the risk of reopening wounds barely healed. But I also thought about the power in showing them exactly who I'd become without their support. Not for revenge, but for truth. One dinner, I agreed. But on my terms, at my apartment. I want them to see my life, my space, my success, all of it. Derek's smile was genuine. Deal. Planning that dinner felt like preparing for battle. I cleaned my apartment obsessively, arranged our best product samples artfully on shelves, framed the Business Weekly article and hung it prominently. Zara thought I was crazy. You don't need to prove anything to them, she insisted, watching me adjust photo frames for the 15th time. I'm not proving anything, I countered. I'm showing them. There's a difference. They spent 23 years not seeing me. I'm making myself impossible to ignore. The night arrived with the weight of inevitability. I'd catered the meal from a restaurant. I loved a small act of control, ensuring I wouldn't be stuck in the kitchen serving while they talked around me. I wore a dress from our spring line, deep emerald green with sustainable silk that flowed like water, when the doorbell rang. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might bruise my ribs. They stood in the hallway like refugees from another life, Mom clutching a bouquet of flowers, Dad with a bottle of wine, Derek slightly behind them as moral support. They all looked older somehow, smaller than I remembered. Hi, Mom said, her voice breaking on the single syllable. Come in, I replied, stepping back to let them enter my world. I watched them take in the apartment, the success markers I'd deliberately displayed, the evidence of a life fully lived beyond their awareness. Dad stopped in front of the framed article, reading it slowly. Mom wandered to the product display, touching the fabrics with something like reverence. Maya, this is. Dad turned to face me, and there were tears in his eyes. This is incredible. You built this? Yes, I said simply. I built it. We sat down to dinner, awkwardness thick as fog. For long minutes, the only sound was cutlery against plates, wine being poured, the careful choreography of people who didn't know how to be family anymore. Finally, Mom broke. We're sorry, she said, voice raw. Maya, We're so sorry. Derek showed us everything, the articles, the social media following, the business plan you tried to tell us about. We should have listened. We should have seen you. Yes, I agreed, not letting her off easy. You should have. Dad set down his fork with deliberate precision. I told myself you were fine because you were so capable. Every time your mother suggested we pay more attention to your achievements, I dismissed it. I convinced myself that struggling children needed more support than successful ones. I was wrong. I was profoundly, shamefully wrong. Do you know how it felt? The words burst out before I could stop them. To watch you celebrate Derek's mediocrity while my actual accomplishments went unnoticed? To be your servant, your support system, your afterthought? No, Mom admitted, but I'm beginning to understand. And Maya, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I am so proud of you. So incredibly proud. What you've built, the lives you're changing through sustainable fashion, the way you've become a voice for ethics in industry. You're extraordinary. The words I'd craved my entire life landed like stones in still water, rippling through me in ways I didn't expect. But they came too late, freighted with years of absence. Thank you, I said carefully. But I need you to understand I'm not doing this for your pride anymore. I don't need your approval to validate my work. I built this knowing you weren't watching, weren't caring, weren't there. Your pride now doesn't erase the years you weren't proud. We know, Derek said quietly. That's why we're here. Not to take credit or to celebrate as if we were always supportive. We're here to acknowledge that we failed you and to ask if there's any way we can be better going forward. I really looked at them for the first time in months. They appeared diminished somehow, as if my absence had revealed the true weight of their neglect. There was genuine remorse in their expressions, the uncomfortable realization of damage done. I need boundaries, I said. Finally, I need you to understand that I'm not your backup plan, your errand runner, your free labor. I'm building something important, and it requires all of me. If you want to be part of my life going forward, it has to be because you value me, not because you need something from me. Anything, Mom said eagerly. Whatever you need. We spent the rest of the dinner actually talking. They asked questions about Ekathred, about my vision for sustainable fashion, about the challenges of entrepreneurship. They listened when I spoke. They saw me. It felt strange, foreign, like learning a new language after years of silence. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave, Dad pulled me aside. I know I can't undo the past, but I'd like to help with your future, if you'll let me. I have connections in the retail industry, people who might be interested in what you're building. No strings attached, no expectations of gratitude or access. Just a father trying to support his daughter's dreams. 23 years too late. I studied his face, looking for manipulation or hidden agendas, but found only sincere regret and hope. Send me the contacts, I said. We'll see where it goes. His smile was tentative but genuine. Thank you for giving us another chance. After they left, I stood in my apartment, surrounded by the evidence of my success, feeling oddly hollow. The revenge I'd imagined proving them wrong, showing them what they'd missed, felt less satisfying than expected. Because the truth was, I hadn't built this empire to spite them. I'd built it to save myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Zara. How did it go? Complicated, I typed back, but maybe, okay? Proud of you either way. I smiled at the message. This was what I'd been building, a chosen family of people who saw me, supported me, celebrated me. People who asked about my future because they cared about the answer. The next morning, I woke to an email from Catherine Park, our lead investor. She wanted to schedule a meeting about expansion opportunities. We had interest from European retailers, and she thought we were ready to scale internationally. I read the email 3 times, disbelief warring with excitement. 2 years ago, I'd been invisible in my own home. Now, I was building something that could change industries across continents. My phone rang. Mom. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hi, Mom. Maya. I just wanted to say thank you for last night, for letting us into your life. even though we don't deserve it. She paused. And I wanted to ask, is your birthday next month? Tears pricked my eyes unexpectedly. Yes, the 15th. Would you like to have dinner? Just us. No pressure. I'd like to start new traditions. Ones where we actually celebrate you. I'd like that, I said, surprised by how much I meant it. Over the following weeks, something shifted. My family began showing up, not perfectly, not without awkwardness, but genuinely. Dad sent me articles about sustainable fashion, actually reading them first and including thoughtful comments. Mom texted occasionally with messages of support, never demanding responses. Derek called weekly, asking about my work and sharing his own small victories. They were learning to see me, finally. But the most important realization came slowly, quietly, like dawn breaking. I didn't need them to anymore. Their validation, while nice, wasn't the oxygen I breathed. I'd built my own foundation, created my own visibility, established my own worth. 3 months later, Ecothredd announced our European expansion at a press conference that drew major media attention. I stood at the podium in a suit from our premiere line, looking out at cameras and reporters and industry leaders, and felt the full weight of my visibility. My family sat in the audience, not in the front row, but there, present, witnessing. After the conference, journalists swarmed with questions. One asked about my inspiration, about how I'd built such a successful company at only 24. I thought about the years of invisibility, about the silent breakfasts and ignored achievements, about the girl who'd felt like a ghost in her own home. And I smiled. I built this because nobody asked about my future, I said honestly. So I decided to create one too magnificent to ignore. The quote went viral, picked up by business publications and motivational accounts across social media. Messages poured in from people who'd felt invisible in their own families, their own lives. Young women who saw themselves in my story. Parents who recognized their own failures and wanted to do better. I became, accidentally, a voice for the unseen. But more than that, I became fully, completely, undeniably myself. 6 months after that press conference, on my 25th birthday, my family threw me a party. Not a surprise they'd learned to ask first, but a genuine celebration of me. They'd invited my team from Ecothredd, my friends, people who actually knew me. Derek gave a toast that made me cry. To my sister, Maya, who taught me that being related to someone isn't the same as knowing them, and that family is something you have to earn through presence and care, not just blood. Thank you for being patient enough to let me learn those lessons. Thank you for being too remarkable to ignore. I looked around the room at faces who saw me, really saw me. Some were family by birth, others by choice, but all were there because they valued my presence, not my service. This was my revenge, not destruction, but undeniable success, not bitterness, but a life so full of purpose and visibility that the years of being overlooked became just the prologue to a much larger story. That night, after everyone left, I stood on my apartment balcony looking out at the city lights. Ecothredd headquarters building was visible in the distance. Our logo illuminated against the night sky, a beacon of sustainable fashion and ethical business practices. I thought about the girl I'd been, making breakfast in a kitchen where nobody saw her. The invisible daughter who'd existed in the margins of her family's attention. She would be so proud of who we'd become. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Thank you for letting us back into your life. I know we don't deserve it. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. I typed back, thank you for learning to see me. It wasn't perfect. Families never are. But it was honest, and it was growth, and it was enough, because the truth I'd learned through all of this wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was simpler and more powerful. You don't need permission to be visible. You don't need validation to have worth. And sometimes the greatest revenge against being overlooked is simply building a life too extraordinary to ignore. I was Maya Sullivan, founder, CEO, sister, daughter, friend, no longer invisible, no longer waiting for anyone to ask about my future, because I was already living it.